Hey y'all, this is Marley K. Hope you all are well. I have an important message that I want to share with you tonight. It is about the coming internet wars that will be waged against us. I have to speak in code because of the subject matter, and I'll be doing I will be interjecting through this video because there's a lot of content that I want to break down for my followers so that you will understand what is coming. The most important thing I want you to understand is that you really need to prepare because we're going to have an internet war that will be waged on us, and it is the next phase of the transition into this new global order. And it is going to be worse than the first thing that we went through beginning in 2020 with all the shutdowns, business closures, mandates, et cetera, et cetera. There's a reason that this disinformation and misinformation tag or labeling is coming out. There's a reason for all this digital censorship. And there's going to be a reason for all the things that are coming related to the digitization of the globe in industrialized nations. We're headed into a new industrial revolution, and I'll talk about that in this video. But this video that I'm going to show you is from Coin Bureau. It's a YouTube channel. They have really good content. I suggest you subscribe to it because they have a lot of useful subject matter and things that I don't necessarily talk about on my channel, but I do follow. I can't talk about everything, but there are some subjects here that you really need to pay attention to. Really good topics. Lastly, I'm going to continue to suggest and implore my followers to get out of the cities. Get out of the cities, move into rural areas, less populated areas. You do not want to be in or near smart cities if you can, and try to do your best to be able to sustain yourself. You're going to need to be able to have food, you're going to have dry goods, you need to have water, you need to have methods to cook in case the power goes out. Everything that I've been telling you for the last 4 or 5 years, I believe within the next year, maybe even this year, by sometime summer, late fall, we're going to start seeing ramped up internet wars waged against us. What happened with Bank of America, what happened with Dole that I was telling you about the other day, what happened with the fuel company last year that had their infrastructure attacked by hackers, and they had to pay this ransom, and then the government came back and got the money for them, and you know you just kind of never heard anything else about it. These people have been doing simulations. WEF has been doing simulations and preparing for the next thing that is coming. You know, the devil doesn't tell you, I'm sorry, the devil does tell you what they're going to do next. It's just people don't believe what the devil says because they trust in the devil and don't trust in the spiritual uh, power that the Most High gives all of us, from our just discernment. So a lot of people are going to be in a really bad position in a little while because they did not prepare, because they don't think the supply chain is ever going to break down, because they just don't understand where their food comes from. They don't understand how the world really works. They're going to learn. When they learn, it will be too late, and a lot of people are going to perish. So listen to this video. Let me get into it, and I'll stop it when I need to talk, and inform you or give you some insight into what's really happening. All the info will be in the description, including the links that he mentions. And one more thing, pay attention to the dates that are mentioned about certain things occurring, because you're going to see a theme. And I know people will say, oh, it's just coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't. So check this out. Let's get into this video by Coin Bureau. The title of the video is The WEF's Cyber Attack Simulation Part 1. This is part one of part two. I'm sorry, part one of two. And I will include both links in the description below this video.
In late 2019, the World Economic Forum, or WEF, co-hosted a global pandemic simulation known as Event 201 with the Johns Hopkins and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. A few months later, an actual pandemic began. In mid-2020, the WEF co-hosted a global cyber attack simulation with Sberbank, Russia's largest bank. Given the aftermath of Event 201, this has led to speculation that a cyber attack is around the corner. This video is the first of a two-part series about the WEF's cyber attack simulations, and today I'll explain what Cyber Polygon is and summarize what was planned, said, in the 2020 simulation. First up, Cyber Polygon is an annual cybersecurity event hosted by BISO, a cybersecurity subsidiary of Sberbank. The first Cyber Polygon event took place in 2019, and it included simulations for DDoS, web application, and ransomware attacks. Unfortunately, the footage of Cyber Polygon 2019 has been removed from YouTube. Fortunately, it's still possible to download a PDF summary of the event. The summary reveals that there were a limited number of participants, with the only notable one being IBM. The WEF was not yet evolved. That said, the WEF's cybersecurity initiatives predate Cyber Polygon by more than a year. The WEF announced the Global Center for Cybersecurity at its annual Davos conference in January 2018. Note that we summarized the WEF's 2023 Davos conference, and that video will be down in the description. Now, at some point in 2019 or 2020, the WEF partnered with Sberbank to organize Cyber Polygon 2020. Not surprisingly, Cyber Polygon 2020 was much larger than the 2019 edition. Over 120 organizations from 29 countries were involved, and the online event had over 5 million viewers from 57 countries. The website for Cyber Polygon 2020 explains that many of these 120 organizations chose to remain anonymous, but it reveals that lots of big names were involved. Besides Deutsche Bank and Ernst & Young, ICANN is noted as being one of the key partners. ICANN provides global internet infrastructure. Now, whereas the focus of Cyber Polygon 2019 was DDoS, web application, and ransomware attacks, the focus of Cyber Polygon 2020 was a so-called digital pandemic. This digital pandemic would affect everything from financial infrastructure to healthcare and...
Okay. So a lot of stuff has gone by I didn't say anything about, but I want to talk about this where they talk about this digital pandemic will impact everything from the financial sector to healthcare. In between that, what is not said is supply chain. So it will impact fuel, it will impact food, it will impact education, it will impact the military. It's going to impact everything. So you can't take anything for granted. You have to really be thinking almost like a survivalist and be figuring out how you're going to navigate all these things when they come. So, with that said, when the supply chain gets attacked, it means if you like to shop at Kroger's or Publix or Heb or whatever grocery store, Harris Teeter, Walmart, wherever you shop, when that supply chain or value chain is destroyed or it's under attack and held hostage, things aren't going to move. What happens if your bank account is hacked and you don't have any money? You can't buy anything. So you need to put things back for just in case, those events happen. Same with utilities, same with water. What happens if the water treatment facility in your area is hacked? You can't get clean water. You see, they're contaminating all the streams, all the groundwater, so wells will be contaminated. So before it's all over with, this place is going to be desolate. If you're in America, America will be desolate. There will be few places that will be okay to live in. And there will be a lot of dead people, lots of chaos, lots of lawlessness, no help. If healthcare systems are seized, what are you going to do? If law enforcement systems are seized, you won't have any protection. What's your plan? If grocery stores and truckers are hacked, trucking systems are hacked, how are you going to move stuff from point A to point B to stores so that you can go and buy it? What if grocery store systems are hacked? They can't bring up groceries because the computer systems are toast. What are you going to do? So you better have a plan. You better be thinking about what you're going to be doing. And all I can say is pray and prep. Just pray and prep because whenever things happen, people are going to lose their minds. You don't want to be out in the street fighting anybody over a bag of rice or sugar or diapers or baby milk or whatever. So,
Would have a global impact. Now, the full Cyber Polygon 2020 stream is still available on Bizone's YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to the full stream in the description, but I will caution that it's almost 5 hours long. I'll also leave a link to an article from Unlimited Hangout, which provides a detailed background on some of the speakers. So, Cyber Polygon 2020 began with opening remarks from Sberbank CEO Herman Greff. Herman explained that the speakers will be discussing, quote, the next pressing issue after the pandemic, which is, of course, a global cyber attack. He revealed that Interpol is also a key partner of Cyber Polygon. Herman also revealed that WEF founder and chairman Klaus Schwab is personally involved with Cyber Polygon. For context, the WEF is an organization consisting of the world's most powerful individuals and institutions, which come together each year to basically decide the future of the world without our input. More about the WEF in the description. Now, the first speaker was none other than Mikhail Mishustin, the Prime Minister of Russia, the second most powerful person in the country after President Vladimir Putin. Mikhail revealed that the post-pandemic recovery will focus on digitization, a process that was accelerated by pandemic restrictions.
okay. So did you hear him say that they're going to focus on digitization this next phase? That means everything that I've been telling you about the smart cities, the different technologies that they want us to have, in our possession, tablets, phones, computers, broadband internet access so that they can track everything. They want you to have the Apple, watches and the Fitbits and the wireless camera and the Ring doorbells, Alexa, all that stuff will be connected to the Internet of Things so that they can track you in these smart cities and just wherever. They just want to know what you're doing. They're going to flip the system, the economic systems, the global economic system, and national economic systems. So you won't have different currencies. They're going to have a global currency. We won't have the money that we have now. You've noticed the self checkouts in the stores, those will be ramped up. A lot of storefronts are going to be leaving. You'll be working from home. Your kids are going to be going to school at home as well. They're going to go back to this homeschool thing. You're going to see a lot of stuff happen. And some things, the infrastructure is going to be in place because during the first phase of this transition, they instituted a lot of things. So people are okay with what happened the first time. They're used to it. So when you do it again, it's not going to be a shock. But there are some new crises and new pains that are coming that we're not going to be accustomed to. And they're going to try to get you to do it voluntarily, but you will be forced if you do not comply, just like you were with the lollipop. Same thing is coming. So if you're in the city, you're going to be limited with your ability to opt out. If you're outside of the city limits, you'll have more freedom, but not much more.
The second speaker was none other than Klaus. He revealed that he'd been working closely with Herman, who you'll hopefully recall is the CEO of Sberbank. Klaus also said that he was pleased to have recently met with Putin, a meeting which apparently took place in St. Petersburg in November 2019. On that note, Putin is a so-called young global leader of the West. Young global leaders tend to become leaders of countries. Although the WEF removed Putin's profile from its website after Russia invaded Ukraine, the association has led to speculation that the war is being used as a pretext for a cyber attack.
Okay, so I want to say you see all these leaders of these countries are either a part of WEF, were groomed by WEF, chosen by WEF, or they're just members because they're rich and powerful or have some influence or money that allows them to be in those spaces. President Obama was a WEF young leader. So was Justin Trudeau. And a lot of other young leaders that you see, you don't really realize until you see them elevated in some way of influence, or they're made a leader over something. And it's like, where did they come from? Or you forget, and then they just kind of show up on the scene and they just start doing stuff. All these leaders that people love so much, those are people groomed to be in the positions that they are in. So, lastly, I want to say is white supremacy plays both sides. So, there are no good guys here. And that's what I want you to understand. You know, people are like, oh, we should like these people and dislike these people. They're all the same people. All of them. All of them. So, they just use politics as a vehicle to do whatever it is that they need to do on behalf of these rich people, of these organizations, the money people.
In any case, Klaus went on to explain that they need a quote, great reset to bring everything together, aka to centralize control. He said that all WEF stakeholders must be mobilized, that everything must be digitized, and that the cyber attack will make the pandemic look like a small disturbance.
Okay, so you heard that. So the pandemic will look like a small disturbance. Let me go back on.
Klaus went on to explain that they need a quote, great reset to bring everything together, aka to centralize control. He said that all WEF stakeholders must be mobilized, that everything must be digitized, and that the cyber attack will make the pandemic look like a small disturbance by comparison. Once Klaus was done, the mic was handed to Alexander Tushkanov, the host of the event. Alexander explained that a cyber attack simulation will be taking place in real time at the Sberbank headquarters during the event, with Bizone employees being hackers and participants being the cyber defenders. Alexander then said that it's been, quote, many years since the fourth industrial revolution was announced.
Okay, I want to blow this up because I want to talk to you about this. This is really important, this fourth industrial revolution slide. So here, look at 1, 2, and 3. This has a double meaning. So 1 is steam engineering. So that means That it again has dual meanings. One is the first generation of the internet. Two is the second generation of the internet. Three is the third generation of the internet. Steam engineering also represents the beginning of the chaos so that they can bring in this new order. Two is the second phase. Three is the third phase. You go around here where it says industry 4.0. The first part is digitization and digitization integration of value chains. Two is digitization of product and service offerings, and three is digital business models and customer access. So I'm going to start here with augmented reality, and it falls in the category of digitization of product and service offerings, and it has to do with the internet entertainment. They want you to be looking at stuff that's not real. They want you in the metaverse. They need you with those goggles on your face, those virtual reality goggles. They need you playing video games. They want your children playing video games and apps on tablets and phones. So augmented reality is all of those things. Cloud computing is what we use now, but they want to expand that. And it's all going to be tied to climate change. So, you don't take pictures and print them out anymore. You take them and store them in the cloud. All your documents, you scan them, you save them in the cloud that they'll provide for you instead of saving them on your own drives where you have possession of them when you want to access them and nobody can take them away. These clouds are going to suck all of your data. They're going to use your data and they're going to sell it. And then they're going to use it to manipulate you in other ways. So, cloud computing is going to be terrible. It is terrible, it's going to be terrible. Mobile devices, they need the mobile devices to keep track of you. All these new phones have chips in them. They are connected to towers and routers all the time so that you have access to the internet. When you're using data, they're collecting data. They also can track everything that you do, what you look at, what you say, what you type, where you go, what you buy. That's what they want, and they're going to expand those activities. IoT platforms, Internet of Things platforms. We're going to be connected in ways we never would have imagined. We're going to be in an open air prison, and the jailer is going to be the internet. Location detection technologies. We already have location detection on our internet routers, our phones, tablets, uh, smart devices, everything, doorbells. Anytime there's an internet protocol number, and so they know where we are. They're going to expand that to smart technology. They're already doing it now, like in the streets. Police have technologies that can scan your tags and tell you where you were, what time, so on and so forth. So that will expand. Advanced human machine interfaces is AI. It's already being rolled out. It's already telling us what they're going to do to us. It's horrible. Better get ready. Authentication and fraud detection is some BS because they can't protect us now and they have a very difficult time um, trying to protect our privacy and protect our information that should be safeguarded. So it's just it's not going to be done. I'll just say that. 3D printing. They need 3D printing so they can print the food for you because you're not going to be eating real food. So there's that. Smart sensors. They're going to put stuff in your head. You see this thing? It's a brain. They're putting stuff in your head inside of your body. Big data analytics. like I said, with the mobile devices and the cloud computing and the augmented reality, Internet of Things, location direction technologies, everything is collecting data that will be used by companies and the government to not only track you, but to create products and services so that they can sell to you. Lastly, you have the multi-level customer interaction and customer profiling. So they will be monitoring our interactions with businesses and service providers, and they will be profiling every customer. So anytime you walk in the store, from the time you walk in to the time you walk out, you will be profiled, except for you won't know it because it'll all be done digitally. So, this, my friends, is the fourth industrial revolution. Ain't it grand? Ain't it grand? All right, I'm going to get back into the video.
Announced by the WEF. He said that the WEF's initiative has resulted in two groups, those who support it and those who oppose it. He asked,
Okay, so pay attention to this section because they are talking about the people who hate it and who love it, but also it's who trusts the system and these people and who fears them for whatever reason or just don't want to go along with the plan. They've already divided us up into two categories because they've watched us, they've monitored us, and they've been chronicling us. So they know who the troublemakers are, they know who won't follow instructions. And they've slowly but surely been releasing this information telling us that healthcare providers have been tracking whether or not we had the lollipop. So it's going to get worse.
asked whether trust or fear will be the motivator for future cooperation. If that wasn't crazy enough, Alexander went as far as to ask whether it will take another crisis to unite the world once the pandemic is over. If you watched our video about how to survive the Great Reset, you'll know that the WEF seems to be keen to create crises for this exact purpose, centralized control. This ties into what was said by the third speaker, who was none other than Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of the UK and a frequent contributor to the WEF's global agenda. He said that digitization will continue after the pandemic is over and that rolling out digital ID is the key to successful digitization. Tony went on to complain that governments weren't doing enough to crack down on privacy preserving technologies and then warned that a quote, globally impactful scandal is inevitable soon.
Okay, they don't want us to have any privacy. So anybody creating any platform that or software or app that allows us to have privacy, they're going to clamp down on those technologies because they don't want us to have privacy. They want to know everything. And notice that they can predict a scandal is coming of global proportions. So who knows what that is, but it's probably going to have something to do with uncooperative leaders. It's my guess.
He also said that the lack of cooperation in the pandemic response makes him concerned that digitization will fail. As I mentioned in that video about
All right, that's another important point because people are not in support of the digitization of their lives because they understand they're no longer needed once you do that. And this transition into the fourth revolution is happening so fast, people have not had a chance to be retrained. People don't really know what they're going to do. They don't know how they're going to work, sustain themselves. So it's really a difficult position to be in. But these people do not care.
how to survive the Great Reset, you'll know that Klaus saw the pandemic as an opportunity to test the Great Reset philosophy. Klaus acknowledged that the WEF's top-down approach failed, which is why they're now focusing on young global leaders for a bottom-up.
Okay, so what he means by this is they tried to force us to do things during the pestilence and plague with rules, threats, government powers, mandates, and national government people fought back. Governments overturned those rules and they underestimated, I guess, the number of people in government who were pro freedom and people who were aware of what was happening and would get the word out. So the top down approach isn't working. So they're going to do the bottom up, which means they're going to start with us and work their way up to the top. So again, white supremacy plays both sides. They always have a plan and a solution, or chaos and a solution. And it seems like they're doing that, or they're planning to do that this go round. So it's just going to be interesting, but their bottom up plan means that we're going to be directly impacted first, which means we will be crying out to
Speaking of which, the
the
fourth
government.
speaker was Jeremy Jurgens, Chief Business Officer at the WEF. Jeremy explained that the speed of digitization will drive the kind of intimate public and private cooperation the WEF is looking for.
Okay, so when I tell you something is going to happen suddenly, it's going to happen suddenly. It's going to be painful, it's going to be hard, and whatever they're going to do to get us to transition, it's going to happen fast and it's going to be painful. And people are going to be in positions where they don't have a choice, they have to compromise. So you need to be on the lookout for something happening big and suddenly. When this system comes back online, it will be digital and we'll be in prison.
Note that private and public integration are common in authoritarian regimes. Jeremy went on to explain that there will be another global crisis, that it will be worse, and that it will happen fast. He then revealed that the WEF has been working closely with intelligence agencies on cybersecurity related to energy infrastructure and asked what would happen if the energy grid went down. Not very subtle. Spec-
Okay, so here they're talking about the energy grid going down. What would happen? So again, be planning on what you're going to be doing in the winter and the summer. You know, how you're going to stay cool, how are you going to stay warm, how are you going to cook regardless of what time of the year it is. What is your plan? You know, how will you survive without power? If you have a well and it requires a pump and the pump requires electricity, what is your plan? Have you transitioned that thing? Do you have a hand pump where you can pump water and haul it yourself? You better be figuring it out because these people are going to do something and it is not going to be pretty.
Speculation aside, the fifth and sixth speakers were Sebastian Tolstoy, head of Ericsson's Russian operations, and Alexei Kornia, CEO of MTS, Russia's largest telecom company. The pair talked about the rollout of 5G and how its purpose is primarily for the operation of smart cities.
All right, you see that. So the reason they want everybody to upgrade and have all this fancy technology is so you can live in a smart city and be tracked all the time.
Not for civilian use. The seventh and eighth speakers were Nick Gowing, a former BBC News journalist, and Vladimir Pozner, a Russian journalist. Naturally, the pair talked about if fake news is the real digital pandemic. Nick began by slamming then US President Donald Trump for calling the mainstream media fake news. Vladimir continued by questioning whether it's a good thing that people have more access to information in the modern day and said
This is really important. This is why we are being censored and monitored. They don't want us to tell you anything. those of us who are awakened, those of us who are operating in our spiritual gifts with spiritual eyes, um, telling us about what we see and what we're dreaming about, even events like this, just kind of breaking it down for you and explaining it to you in practical ways so that you can see it. They don't want you to be awakened, because when you're awakened, you will make different decisions. You will resist. You will no longer be swept up into their web of deceit. And so they got to keep you asleep. So that means they have to silence people like me. So when you see people like me and Corn Bureau and um, people like Canadian Prepper, Southern Prepper One, all the different people who are out here fighting for the small person and trying to wake people up and hip them to what's happening, they're going to disappear. And then you are going to be left with nothing. So please take advantage of all this information that we're giving you. Watch for the signs, because it's your responsibility to watch, and you got to prepare for what's coming.
Said that journalists used to be soldiers under the Soviet Union. Funnily enough, there was lots of disagreement, with Vladimir saying he wasn't enjoying the conversation. It seems Vladimir won the argument, though, because governments around the world are in the process of passing online censorship laws, some of which will go into force in the next few months.
Okay. Again, people thought we were just imagining stuff when we were talking about censorship. I started talking about it, early last year, because I could tell things were changing. And then once I got booted from Medium, I knew that it's just a matter of time. So I know it's only going to be a matter of time before I'm pulled from YouTube, because of the type of content that I discuss, and because my audience is primarily, targeting African American Black people, the people who they don't ever want to wake up. Because if we rebelled, their whole shebang is up. So Yasharel must stay asleep, and they're doing whatever they can to keep them asleep. It's up to you to wake up. I can bring you the information, but I can't make you accept it. And you can see your time is limited on the internet. You're going to be entertained. You're not going to be getting information that's independent from free thinking people like us. So please like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and also support, your content creators who are independent free thinkers, not creating nonsense, because the day is coming where we are going to be silenced, especially when this war ramps up. They're not going to want us to get information, and they're not going to want us to tell you stuff, because you need to be kept in the dark in order to transition into the next phase of this global order.
You can learn more about that using the link in the description. Anyways, the ninth speaker was Stéphane Duguin, CEO of the Cyber Peace Institute, and he didn't say anything worth noting. Heck, the Cyber Polygon website didn't even bother to provide a description for his slot. I suppose that calling for peace doesn't quite jive with the WEF's obsession with all kinds of wars. It's a similar story for the 10th and 11th speakers, Danya Takar, Vice President of AEMA, and Wendy Whitmore, Vice President of IBM X-Force Threat Intelligence. As exciting as these titles sound, the conversation itself was pretty boring. TLDR, hackers are targeting infrastructure, and everyone is at risk. The 12th and 13th speakers were Jacqueline Kerno, who works in cybersecurity consulting at Ernst & Young, and Hector Rodriguez, a senior vice president at Visa. The topic of discussion was how to prepare for a cyber crisis, and what the panelists said was eye-opening to say the least. Jacqueline insisted that the next global crisis is imminent and said that the only solution is government regulation. Thankfully, Hector was not as convinced there will be another global crisis, but revealed that Visa already had a plan for dealing with the pandemic shortly before it began. I'm sure it's a coincidence. Now, the 14th and 15th speakers were Trace Erting, the chairman of the WEF's Center for Cybersecurity, and Jürgen Stock, the Secretary General of Interpol. For those unfamiliar, Interpol fights international crime with the help of law enforcement agencies from 195 countries and counting. While the Interpol Charter states the organization is supposed to be politically neutral, in practice it appears to be very closely aligned with the WEF. This is because Troyes revealed that he and Jürgen have been close friends for 30 years. Jürgen also
Okay, you see, everybody is friends again. There are no good guys. They are two different wings on the same dirty bird.
said that Interpol and the WEF are aligned. Jürgen is particularly passionate about the WEF's fourth industrial revolution, which essentially involves the digitization of everything so that it can be closely monitored and controlled. To that end, Jürgen believes that software and hardware should have security by design features that allow for this control. The 16th speaker was Craig Jones, who also works at Interpol, specifically as the organization's cybercrime director. Craig's answers weren't nearly as revealing as the questions from Alexander, who asked about cyber attacks being executed in waves across multiple countries.
Okay, did you catch that? They're asking questions about attacks happening in multiple countries in waves. This is why you need to be prepared.
Oddly specific. I should note that Alexander asked the last few speakers if cybercrime groups collaborate better than countries do. The answers were fairly mixed, but the consensus seemed to be that cybercrime groups are collaborating better than countries are, which makes sense given the tense political climate. The 17th speaker was Petr Gorodov, head of international legal cooperation at Russia's General Prosecutor's Office. Petr was watching the simulation at Sberbank headquarters, and Alexander asked him why cybercrime was on the rise in Russia and why only 8% of cybercrime cases are solved. Petr dodged the question and called on the United Nations to create a new convention focused on cybercrime. If I had my tinfoil hat, I'd tell you the lack of cybercrime prosecution in Russia is due to the fact that the Russian government is involved.
Okay, now let me tie this into what's happening now, bring it all home. This simulation happened in 2020. These people have been preparing for what's coming. Notice that this war is getting ready to ramp up, and the media has been talking about, all these different attacks, the attack on the grid, the attack on the infrastructure. Different governmental entities have been hacked. So they're already planning what's coming, and they're already blaming RU. But RU was already engaged in these activities, so they know how to make things happen, and it won't be an accident. So instead of really it being an act of war, it's like everybody is collaborating to bring this old order down and the new order up.
Perhaps they're practicing the WEF's cyber attack. Conspiracy theories aside, the 18th speaker was John Crane, Chief Security Officer of ICANN. Alexander asked him about the collaboration comparison between countries and cybercrime groups. John was the only speaker who claimed that the pandemic had increased the collaboration between countries. John also revealed that ICANN is keeping track of the registration of internet domain names around the world and their correlation to crime. As an international organization, ICANN
Okay, this is important because states and national governments are creating disinformation and misinformation boards and laws and regulations so that they can regulate speech. So when you have a user website, or if you have an internet IP address tied to a website, this ICANN knows it and they'll be able to report to whoever if you're saying or doing something on your device that is considered inappropriate. So you're really going to have to get off of the grid in order to avoid the digitization policing that they're planning for us.
ICANN is incapable of pursuing any enforcement action, but it has been forwarding this information to the appropriate authorities.
You hear that? They have been telling on us.
Now, the final speaker was Stanislav, chairman of Sberbank. He thanked the WEF, Interpol, and others for helping put together CyberPolygon 2020. He explained that the outcome of the ongoing cyber attack simulation would be published in a subsequent report. As I mentioned earlier, the attackers in the simulation were Bizone employees, and the defenders were the participants in the event. The identities of the defenders are not revealed in the simulation results. Now, the simulation results seem to suggest that the participants are unprepared for a cyber attack, regardless of their industry.
Okay, you hear that? Nobody's prepared for a cyber attack of any kind, whether it's in multiple countries, because remember, globalization makes us global partners when it comes to trade. And if the supply chain goes down, what are you going to do? You got to prepare. You perish for a lack of knowledge. This is knowledge. Knowledge is power. Arm yourselves with your own preparations in concert with faith in the Most High to get you through the rough patches because the rough patches are coming. Nobody's prepared, and the lack of preparation is intentional.
The results also specify that more than 20% of participants were incapable of identifying cyber threats before they occur. For what it's worth, financial institutions and IT companies performed the best across the three cyber attack scenarios. Note that the link to the results will be in the description. So this brings me to the big question, and that's whether the WEF is in fact planning a global cyber attack to achieve even more control. I'll start by saying that a simulation of a Russian cybersecurity group pretending to attack dozens of Western corporations is suspicious no matter how you slice it. Executing a global cyber attack would also require the same kind of cooperation the WEF is trying to push with cyber defense simulations like CyberPolygon. The catch is that the cooperation the WEF requires for a global cyber attack has been breaking down ever since the pandemic began. The conflicts over the distribution of things like medical equipment and medicine has led to a decline in trust between countries. This is probably why the host of CyberPolygon felt compelled to ask the question of whether trust or fear would be the motivator for cooperation in the crisis. Now, interestingly, the only person Alexander actually asked this question to was WEF Chief Business Officer Jeremy Jurgens. Jeremy admitted that fear achieves compliance, but cautioned that compliance is not the same as cooperation. Jeremy also admitted there is serious competition between countries. This begs the question of how the WEF will achieve cooperation without using fear in a way that won't be affected by the conflict.
So the discussion of fear is really important because what they're saying here is that they did not get the levels of people who would willfully comply with their different scenarios. And so they have to do something in order to get more compliance. That's scary.
Competition between countries. The answer seems to be a global crisis where no individual or institution is to blame, and this seems to be the crisis some of the speakers alluded to. The only problem with this kind of crisis is that the WEF wouldn't have nearly the same degree of control over its emergence and response like it did with the pandemic. Ideally, the WEF would have a way of secretly creating or exacerbating a crisis where it's impossible to detect their influence. This then begs the question of what kind of a global crisis would meet this criterion, and the answer seems to be a climate crisis. crisis. It just so happens that this is something the WEF and its allies have been talking a lot about lately, and it happens to be a crisis that they could secretly create or exacerbate. If you watched our video about weather modification, you'll know that it is a very real technology that's been around for almost 100 years. You'll also know that modern weather modification technologies are extremely powerful and that it's reportedly impossible to detect when they're being used. A climate crisis made or made worse by this kind of undetectable weather modification would therefore be the perfect path to total control for the WEF. The only thing they would need to manage is the flow of information online. That's something they're currently addressing with those online safety rules. The silver lining to this speculation is that the WEF doesn't only require the collective trust of countries to make this master plan work, it requires the trust of the average person. This trust has been broken beyond repair, and what's left of it is being pounded into dust by the WEF's ever more dystopian plans. Does this mean that a cyber attack is off the table? Not exactly. Remember, this is part one of a two-part series. In part two, I'll be summarizing what was said at Cyber Polygon 2021 and looking at how the Ukraine war has affected the WEF's cyber plans. So be sure to subscribe and ping that notification bell so you don't.
All right, I'm going to stop it here. So this is the end of the video. I will include all of the information in the description for part one and part two, as well as all of the things that were discussed in this video, the links to the different presentations that he discussed. But I just wanted to share this with you because I want you to understand what is coming. I've already seen an increase in the numbers of attacks, and there will be more. You already heard what's going on. So it's time for the next phase. This is getting ready to be year 3, 4, 3, say 3 of the transition. So it's time for a new phase. And the new phase will likely come in sometime summer, late fall. So it's going to come in at a bad time. So please just be prepared. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Please leave your comments below. If you have any, you know, um, ideas of what people can do to prepare for a cyber attack, or, if you have any information about things that are going on in your area that we may not know about, because there are a lot of attacks happening and a lot of them are not being reported. So, with that said, y'all, I am out. Be safe, pray, repent, seek the Most High, because these diabolical plans, we don't have any advocates here on earth that can save us from these people. We're going to need a supernatural Savior, and we have one, especially Yasharel. We are the people, and at the end of the day, everything they do is about harming us. They're trying to delay the second coming, but they will not be successful. It doesn't mean that there won't be any casualties along the way. It doesn't mean that we won't be harmed or bruised. Just means we got to do what we got to do so that we can endure to the end. So make sure you prepare. And again, I can't tell you what to do. Get out of the cities, get out of those places that are going to be smart cities. Learn how to be self sufficient. Buy seeds, heirloom seeds, non genetically modified seeds. Start growing you some food someplace, because things are going to get hard. People are going to be desperate. Supply chains are going to break down. Lights won't work. We're going to be in a bad way. It's going to be a lawless place. And you do not want to be in the streets when people start going wild because they don't have anything, they don't have any money. There's chaos everywhere. So when society breaks down, you need to be in your house protecting your property and your family. All right, y'all. I'm out.